Staffing shortages and another air traffic control equipment failure have been plaguing flights at Newark Airport. The airport is so short on air traffic control staffing. Flights again were delayed this morning, according to the FAA.
And this happens after there was another equipment outage on Sunday that caused a 45-minute ground stop. CNN's Pete Montine is with us on this story. You've been monitoring a press conference that was held today by the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. What are you learning?
Well, two new air traffic control meltdowns at Newark in a 48-hour span, and the Trump administration seems especially focused on blaming all of this on the Biden administration. And then Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Trump Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, just held a press conference, and he opened it by saying the Biden administration bungled relocating the Newark approach control facility at the center of all this. Let's bring you up to speed. There have been 4 major systems outages at that radar facility, which is responsible for flights arriving into and departing out of Newark. The outage 2 weeks ago on April 28th really brought all the issues here into focus. It caused 5 air traffic controllers to take what's called trauma leave. Then there was another outage this past Friday, May 9th, which lasted about 90 seconds. Controllers once again lost both radar scopes and radio contact, really critical systems here. Then just yesterday, another new outage. Duffy says that time a new backup system kicked in, but the FAA still implemented a ground stop for about 45 minutes to make sure that system was stable. Duffy now says he's recommending an Office of Inspector General investigation into who is to blame here. And we asked Duffy if the first Trump administration should have taken care of aging air traffic control infrastructure. Duffy said Trump wanted to but couldn't, and the Biden administration's Infrastructure Act should have fixed this. Listen.
They spent a lot of money, and they didn't spend the money here. The president was understanding the cracks at the end of his administration and was going to fix it 4 years ago. But the last administration, they did nothing about it. And so as things get old, you get to the point where you're starting to hear some rattles in your car. That's probably the sign you bring it to the shop. The last administration was hearing the rattles, and they basically kept driving and didn't do anything to fix it.
We're deep in the weeds on the blame game now. The Trump administration now has a multi-billion-dollar plan to fix aging air traffic control equipment. It includes a nationwide replacement of the telecom infrastructure that's been causing these problems at Newark. Duffy told me in an interview last week this could take as little as 3 to 4 years to do all of that, but the fixes really can't come soon enough, especially for problems beyond just Newark. By the way, there was a ground delay, meaning flights delayed going into Newark because of these staffing shortages at Newark Approach Control. The average delay right now, an hour and 40 minutes. So we are not nearly out of the woods yet when it comes to these Newark air traffic control systems problems.
If you're headed to Newark, you got to pack your patience. Right,
Man, I teed you up for that one. That was too easy.
He did.
Maybe change your flight.
Yeah, maybe.
Good idea.
How's that going for you?
I will do it eventually. I just like
I feel like we keep talking about this.
It's going to happen.
Okay. I'll believe it when I see it. Prove
maybe
it.
things
Prove
could
it,
clear
Keeler.
up. It's increasingly looking like I will change my flight. I'm being honest.
Yeah, we'll see.
Pete Montine, always a pleasure, man.
Anytime. Always happy to be here.
Newark International Airport experienced yet another equipment outage on Sunday that led the FAA to implement a ground stop, delaying inbound flights for about 45 minutes. It is the third incident of equipment issues at the airport in just over a week. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced that over the next couple of weeks, they will be scaling back capacity at Newark while they try to fix this issue. He also reassured flyers that it is safe to fly into Newark's airport as the busy summer travel season is just around the corner. Joining me now is CNN transportation analyst Mary Schiavo. We talked about this last week, and here we are again, and there's been another technical failure. I mean, how do you fix this right now at Newark while planes are still flying in and out?
Well, Secretary Duffy got it right, but wasn't as blunt as perhaps I am. The only way to fix it is to put in a short-term fix, which is what he said, reduce the number of flights. Because he has already said, we now have to admit, the FAA now has to admit that the risk is very high. When they allowed this cobbled together system moving people from New York to Philadelphia to run traffic into Newark, they said, oh, we could have outages and there's no backup if we do, but the risk is, the 1 in a million shot. It's not going to happen. Now it's happened at least 4 times that we know of, and probably more. And so Secretary Duffy has said, look, we cannot buy the equipment we need. And the second thing he's already said is, and we don't have the air traffic controllers we need. We're putting them in training, and we're at the lowest point in decades, but we're putting them in training, so he has no choice. He has to cut back on the number of flights, and I do think it's going to take Department of Transportation orders. Cut back on the flights.
Wow. I do want to ask you, are we just hearing about this more? Obviously, Newark having it happen several times in a week seems like an anomaly, but we did hear from Transportation Secretary Duffy saying this could happen anywhere because the equipment is so old. So are we hearing about these more, or are these things been happening and we're just becoming more and more aware of them?
Well, I think we're more aware of them. I mean, certainly the things at Newark are happening. It started happening last year. I think November 6th was when we first heard about one. But, the General Accounting Office, last year put out a report and said that there are probably 40% of the systems that can't be fixed or are at a point where they may not be able to be fixed. So this has been coming for a long time. But, it's surprising that no one focused on that report that came out last year, really setting out the vulnerabilities in the system and the fact that we cannot buy this very old equipment. The terminals that they're talking about, for example, that were failing, those were put in the 90s. I mean, I was there when they were put in, and they're failing because it's ancient technology. And so, yes, we're hearing about it more, but these reports, if the FAA followed what they knew, and they followed the risk and they acknowledged the risk, I mean, they knew about this for some time.
Yeah, I can't believe that the 90s was 30 years ago. You just hurt my heart there. But anywho, I do want to ask you sort of about how they're going to go about doing this, because right now with DOGE sort of making cuts, this sounds like an extremely expensive endeavor that needs to be undertaken because the equipment is just so old around the entire country.
Well, you've hit it right there. Expense. It is very expensive. And then when they had the big rollout last week, and they had, like 50 people on the stage saying they're all buying into this. And Congress has said that they are giving them an initial budget of something like 12.5 or 15 billion. That's the tip of the iceberg. In years past, they were building out and dumped landing systems, control systems, et cetera. And in the 90s, they were $3 billion for just pieces and parts. This system is probably going to cost 5 times those estimates, maybe even 10 times those estimates, but it has to be rolled out over years because it's simply not available. It has to be designed and built. They can't go to the local store and buy it. And so it will take years to build the system, and it probably take 1 or 2 years to get the controllers through training, because it takes about 18 months to train a controller, and then they have to have on-the-job training after that. So this is a long-term fix, which is why, once again, he's going to have to cut traffic at airports with problems. There is no alternative.
Yeah, that is the only way to make it a little bit safer for people, because these equipment failures keep happening. Mary Schiavo, it is always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this Monday morning.